Think we're all here and ready to get started. We might have some more trickle in on the way, but we'll go ahead and kick things off. Let's see if I can share my screen. All right. So this is our sixth get together now of Lighting the Way from when we launched the Lighting Advocacy letter several years ago. We've been doing two of the Lighting the Way webinars a year since the inception. So we're excited to welcome you to our sixth one. Today we are going to do a quick overview of the letter. We're going to take a look at the updates on the Mindful Materials website, and we have guest speakers with us today from Atelier 10 and Luma. So we'll look at a couple updates and then get things started on our discussion. So like I said, this is our sixth meeting. We've had 5 of these previously, and our next one is going to be in the spring. It's usually close to Earth Day. It's going to be April 14th this coming year. So you can mark that on your calendars. And if you haven't been on the Mindful Materials website in a minute, there are a few updates here. So the interface looks a little bit different, and we, even as the signatories it was not intuitive to us where to find the letter now. So we wanted to point out to you that you can find information on the pledge under the About tab. And if you go under the About tab down to the material pledges, you'll find everything about the Lighting Advocacy letter is in the first little segment there. So if you click on the Learn More, it'll bring you to recordings of the previous webinars you can check out. There's also a link to download the latest version of the toolkit. And you will also find a prompt to sign the letter if you haven't become a signatory already. So just a little recap of the letter, where you can find it. I think Reiko and I counted earlier today. I think we're up to 128 signatories. So if you don't already see your logo up there, you can have a look online and join. And as a reminder, in the toolkit, there's some useful tools in there, such as the SD narrative. You can copy and paste and use as language in your narratives if you don't already have that on the different aspects of sustainability related to lighting. You'll also find some examples of language you can use on your lighting schedule as ways of calling out different reporting metrics with your lighting fixtures and whether or not they have them, or if you've worked with the manufacturer to obtain that upon award of the project. There's also suggestions on how to initiate conversations with different stakeholders and kind of bring these ideas to light, especially during a project kickoff. So whether you're trying to relate through ESG agendas or wellness programs or attracting and retaining talent, or even just a laser focus on the bottom line, there's different ins through this conversation tree to help you navigate those different conversations. And we've also included some information on different ways to search for luminaires that have various reportings on aspects of their sustainable design. We have liked Light AZ. There's some callouts here on the screen where you can go to their advanced search and find different ways to identify declare labels or row house. We don't have EPDs on here just quite yet, but it has been really nice to see the offerings of declare labeled fixtures increase significantly over the last couple of years, and the identification of the row house fixtures as well. So it's nice that these are becoming more standardized ways of identifying fixtures, and then we can find them on some bigger search engines. Okay, without any further ado, we will jump into our talks for today. And we're going to start with Chad Grosshart. And let me switch over to my other screen. So Chad is the director of the lighting design and global lighting practice leader with Atelier 10, which is an international environmental design consulting firm. Chad has extensive experience with high performance lighting design for public and institutional projects, both in the US and overseas. He is a professional member of the International Association of Lighting Designers and the Illuminating Engineering Society of North America, and holds a master's in architectural lighting design from Parsons New School for Design in New York, and is an adjunct instructor in the program. And Chad, I will go ahead and hand things off to you.
Oh, thanks very much, Melissa. I'm gonna attempt to share my screen. Let's see what we can do. Great. Can everyone see that? Bright green?
Yep.
And can everyone hear me
Well,
okay?
yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. So this is a fun forum. I'm gonna talk a lot about kind of the journey that I've seen the lighting industry take in my time as a professional lighting designer. I've been doing this work. Well, I got out of undergrad in '93, but became an architectural lighting designer in about 1998. And a little bit about me is that I was a theatrical lighting designer first, and I really didn't know about sustainability, and I really wasn't very focused on it. And it wasn't until I joined Atelier 10, that is a really highly renowned sustainability practice with a small lighting practice that we added on, that I became aware of things like LEED and the energy code that we had to try to help our buildings, beat and do better than. And it was really interesting to see, to be involved in some of the earliest LEED projects and net zero projects from a lighting standpoint. And it was at a time when the lighting industry was really not very focused on on the improving of lighting energy use. In fact, some folks were really looking at it as something to complain about. So one of the things that really helped kick off my journey was I started doing some trips to places that have not a lot of resources, and installing solar powered, battery powered lighting in some far flung places. While I was there, I would see people using kerosene, and I would see the transformation that these bright, glary, not so spectacular light sources, LEDs, were at the time, really being transformational for some of the people that were living on less than $1 a day. It's sort of amazing as we live with our iPhones and digital addressable lighting systems to understand that over 1 billion people still use a match to start their light source each evening. And the health outcomes, the greenhouse gas and the carbon emissions that come from using fossil fuels for lighting was something that really helped me to understand that there was a two-pronged thing going on. We've got people who are developing countries just trying to get some simple lighting that would allow them to do their daily activities after dark. And then there's the work I did when I came back to the States and was designing lighting for large corporate spaces and trying to use fewer resources while we were there. So, a couple of quick shots of me spending time putting up wiring, putting up solar systems. I learned a lot from the people that don't have a lot. I saw that, one of the lead points that we have nowadays is high reflectance surfaces, right? Because that helps each lumen go further. This was a simple mud hut, but they had put, at first I thought maybe it was just for decoration, but they had put newspapers up everywhere to increase the albedo of the interior of that space, to help that candlelight and help that small light source to be amplified within the space. These folks actually know a lot about sustainability, sort of through trial and error and through necessity. Um, Similarly, on the left-hand side, that's a very rough schoolhouse that I put some lighting into, and you'll notice how the tables are oriented. on the right side is an award-winning LEED Platinum Yale Forestry building, and they have exactly the same solution for how to use to distribute daylight to long skinny tables, and you put them perpendicular to the window. Now, I'm pretty sure that there weren't any award-winning architects or interior designers helping these Nepalese folks figure out how to put these tables out in the most successful way, but they knew how to do it. They had figured it out over time. And here's an example of that Yale Forestry building. But it's one of the most advanced sustainable buildings out there, and a lot of the same things were being done unbeknownst to the people in a poor village in Nepal. So a lot of great outcomes from that. I learned a lot and was really motivated to keep doing better for the planet with the resources that we have. A couple of years later, I got involved with Haiti. I've been going to Haiti for 10 years, have not been back since 2021 due to the unrest. But over the 10 years that I've been active there, I put up a number of solar systems from street lighting poles to lighting up clinics and public spaces, as well as community centers. So a great project. When you get to Haiti, you realize that, this is a wet rated fixture in Haiti. This is an outdoor rated
Mm.
fixture, and they don't have the same technologies that we do, but they still have the same needs. And so we try to do the best we can with limited resources. And putting in lead acid. These are basically golf cart batteries, giant bank of batteries with a solar system on the roof and an inverter. That yellow box holds an inverter that some folks might use to run a TV at a tailgate from their giant SUV. It's the same gear that we were using to convert DC power to AC power to run lighting and computers in this uh, newly built community center. So it was really a great experience for me, and I was able to share that with a number of classes of Parsons students over the years, got them involved, and I think we may have created a new crop of sustainably focused designers through their time in this village and their time seeing how small amounts of light can make a big impact for people that are really surrounded by darkness at night. This is a sort of a great shot at the end of my first project in Haiti. We lit the building up. We were celebrating. That was one of the electricians that helped me there on site. And it really led me onto a high that really carried into my work as a professional lighting designer. And lots of support from a number of lighting manufacturers over the years, donating a couple $1,000 here and there to help make that work go. So thanks to them. These are more students. These are my last year of Parsons students. We had lit up this shelter behind us, which is part of the wharf. People wait in the hot sun and also early in the morning before daylight for the boats to take them back and forth. This is on a small island off the coast of Haiti. So all of that is a preview to say that it's really exciting to see how the lighting industry has embraced our responsibilities to light sustainably. Um, when I first started in this business, lighting just needed to look good. There was no energy budget. When I started in the late 90s doing architectural lighting design, I couldn't have told you how many watts per square foot any of my projects or any of my space types were using. We had deep plan office buildings with lots of HVAC and lots of fluorescent lighting, and people were really focused on using less. I think the oil crisis of 1970, at least in my life, was when we started to think about energy as a resource that we had to be careful of. But it wasn't until the 80s where I think we started to know about the hole in the ozone layer, right? We started to think about rising oceans and greenhouse gases and this idea that there's a finite resource here and we need to take care of it. And so it's interesting to me. The Brunfeld statement was made in 1983, or I guess in 1987 when that report came out. And it took, until 2001 for the IALD to really say, hey, this is one of our core principles, and this is something that we should all be caring about. So, not to blame the lighting industry, but just to sort of acknowledge that we have oftentimes lagged behind other industries that are engaging with these topics. And this is all going to end on a positive note, right? The earlier webcasts that we've had, I'm going to touch on them as I wrap up mine, is that we really are doing some great things and digging deep into how we can do better as lighting designers. So for me, as a lighting designer, everything changed in 2004. I was working at a large lighting design firm in New York City. Um, and ASHRAE 2004 came out, and suddenly I was told that I had to use less than 0.65 watts per square foot in a corridor. And I couldn't have told you how many watts I used before. I just knew that a 32-watt compact fluorescent downlight on a 10-foot center was about right. And my calcs would tell me that was going to give me, 20-foot candles at the floor, and that was good enough, right? But suddenly I was given a new metric and I had to think about how many watts I was using, and I realized I almost couldn't do it with what they were giving me. And I started to start looking into things like the decorative allowance and what other ways can we start to, skin this cat. And so I feel like for us as an industry, it's really 20 years ago this year that we as a whole really engaged in thinking about energy and how it works. So yeah, there was a cascade of lighting power allowances that were going down. And if you remember, in 2004, we didn't really have LEDs. We were still doing small wattage metal halide. LEDs existed, but mostly for like an RGB type of effect. And so as LEDs ramped up and became part of our industry, we also started to really squeeze down on the amount of watts per square foot that we could use. Um, I went to work with it for Atelier 10 in 2006 as this was all kind of coming together. And I decided that, sort of like a baseball player, if I don't understand the infield fly rule, if I don't understand the rules of the game, I probably can't be very good at it. And so I volunteered to be the IALD's 90.1 lighting subcommittee voting member. And so I spent the next 8 years going through each cycle trying to help us save energy but not take away flexibility for designers. Um, and it was a great experience. It was a lot of reading of very fine print and arguing over thresholds with various people in the industry, but it was interesting. But we'll see that in 2001 you were allowed 1.5 watts per square foot for a private office, for an enclosed office. Now in 2023, we're at half that. So think about the dramatic change that that's brought to us in terms of metrics and how we have to do that work. And I can tell you that being in New York City, with going to DLF and ILD events, there was a lot of grumbling. Famously, a lighting designer from a big firm said, "You wouldn't take aquamarine out of Picasso's palette. You can't tell me how many watts I'm allowed to use." As if, we were somehow immune to, global warming and had no responsibility to the rest of the world. But it was really a shift for them, for all of us, to think that there's another parameter that we're going to be measured by, and we can't just use unlimited watts. Whereas up until that very moment, there were almost no one was enforcing the energy code, and it certainly wasn't tight enough for anyone to really worry about. Um, Famously, around the same time, the Energy and Security Act, Independence and Security Act of 2007 came out, and they started saying that they're going to phase out incandescent lamps. By 2012, the worst efficacy lamps were going to be gotten rid of, and we had to be at 45 lumens per watt efficacy by 2020, which seemed scary to us at the time. Currently, the L price is at 184 lumens per watt, right? We can get 100 lumens per watt out of most sources these days. But at the time, it seemed like a big deal, and we had to get rid of metal halide. That was coming soon. And it wasn't clear that LEDs were going to be the magic bullet that they turned out to be. At the time, they weren't really doing what we needed to do, but the government, the DOE, said if you don't lower your lighting power densities, if you don't lower the ASHRAE 90.1 energy use across the board, we'll do it for you. We'll cut it by 20%. Every LPD will just be cut by 20%. And that scared us because we wanted some control as designers to say, hey, this is a fat allowance. We could take some more out of this, but this one's already about as low as it can get. And we should hold on to that and not really go any lower. But it was a real push-pull, and it was an interesting time as the lighting industry was ramping up and starting to really pay attention to this. Famously, probably the father of of architectural lighting design, Howard Branston, wrote an article for the New York Times, and he complained about the 100-watt A19 going away, and said that he was hoarding them and filling up his basement with cases and cases of 100-watt A19s.
Mm.
Um, it, Howard was a bit of a crank. He was a brilliant man, but a bit of a gadfly. And he just passed a couple of years ago, and I really do wonder if his kids had to clean out the basement, with all these boxes and boxes of A19, 100-watt A19s. And it was just the 100 watters. So it was this thing that was sort of ubiquitous to all of us, keeping in mind that, around this time, 2009, almost every decorative fixture we used still had an incandescent lamp inside of it. We had linear fluorescence for truffers and for linears. We had, you know, linears and compact fluorescence for certain things, but the compact fluorescents were still pretty lousy. And so this idea that we were going to get rid of incandescent light bulbs, uh, at least for Howard, caused a lot of concern. And he opened a website called concerninglight.com. I don't think it's active anymore. Um, Around the same time, lead became part of the vocabulary. And it wasn't until about 2005, 6, where it started to really catch on. The important thing here was that it was really only focused on energy use at first. And this resulted in some really lousy spaces. If all you care about is how low can you go on energy, you end up with, spaces that look like this, right? They're very efficient, but they're not balanced for the visual experience. You get dark, glary spaces. And so it was exciting to see that in 2009, with the introduction of LEED V3, we started talking about light pollution and lighting quality and some of the other things to help offset the extremely bad LEED Platinum buildings that got built under LEED V2. And then in 2014, we saw the well building standard come out. And as someone who had been doing a ton of LEED buildings, I was really excited to see that there was someone out there incentivizing the human experience, not just caring about energy, but also the performance of the building and the performance of the humans inside that building. So it was an imperfect standard when it came out. There's still arguments that go on about circadian lighting and what's the right threshold and how much health does it actually promote. But it was the other pieces, the low glare and other things that I think can be rolled into the sustainability discussion around what else can light do for us and, preserve people as well as the environment. So I'm kind of wrapping up here. It's just been exciting to see lighting designers embracing sustainability, not fighting it. Um, the company that I work for spends all of their time running energy models, running daylight simulations, doing materials and life cycle analysis. And as a lighting designer sitting within that studio, it sort of through osmosis, it leaked over, and I was able to see all the interesting ways that we were helping architects do better by their buildings and better by the planet. Um, so what we've really been talking about the last few years is not greenhouse gases, but now carbon. And embodied carbon has become a bigger and bigger focus. We all sort of know at some of the discussions we've had around the Green Light Alliance, but it's the way that we can measure it. And somewhere right here I have a graphic. Oh, sorry. Um, Maybe it's here, but you can see the embodied carbon is the thing that doesn't change over time. And so focusing on that piece, and we watched as a lighting designer, I watched other industries, furniture, paint, roofing materials, all go through this process where they were doing the work and telling my my coworkers that were doing life cycle analysis and carbon analysis what was in their products and what that embodied carbon signature looked like. And so it was really exciting for us when the Green Light Alliance started up. We jumped in with both feet, put a fair amount of time into being volunteers and being part of that process through one of my coworkers, Chelsea. And it's been just really exciting to see how the lighting industry is starting to embrace this. We've got a long way to go, but as someone who's been sitting in the sustainability world with, one foot in each world, it's great to see that the lighting industry and groups like Mindful Materials here are really pushing us to pay better attention, to understand what we're doing. Um, the one last thing that I'll just talk about quickly is get right through. Lighting and material health is a great way for us to achieve a number of credits that can connect back to lighting. It's something that we used to think didn't really apply to lighting. Um, my coworkers were excited to see us helping out in that way, and we did a project in Athens, Greece, where we did a life cycle information, a life cycle analysis for the entire impact of this 500-acre urban park in Greece. And because we were busy with the Green Light Alliance and had gotten some baseline information and data, we were able to give some meaningful data into a real life cycle and carbon study for a large impact space. And we found that the light fixture was accounting for about 25% of the total global warming impact of these big poles that were going up, including the concrete, including all the metals and steel that were going into it. And that helped us to be much more accurate with the overall impact of the project. And it was just great to see lighting kind of pulling their weight, or at least doing more than we had done in the past to inform how the project was going to shake out from a carbon standpoint. So just to wrap up, it's really exciting that we're doing what we can at the moment. We've got a group that are really focused in the audience for this talk, and it's catching up to the other disciplines. And I want to thank you guys for joining this fight for a better tomorrow and helping lighting be part of that story. Thanks.
Thank you, Chad. I don't know if we want to jump into any Q&A here, or we can move on to Luma and then circle back at the end. Maybe we'll do the other talk and then, unless anyone has any burning questions for Chad off the bat. Okay, then let's move. We'll hear from our next two speakers. We have from Luma with us, Colleen Peach and Eric Campbell. Colleen, with almost 2 decades of experience in lighting design, has worked on a wide range of projects such as commercial offices, historic renovations, multifamily housing, and more. Her background in architecture contributes to a deep understanding of how to create beautiful and functional environments. And Colleen is involved as a member of both the AIA and IES, serving as a past president and committee member, and remaining an active speaker at events and in classrooms. And we also have Eric Campbell with us as well. Eric has 16 years of experience in lighting design, working on a wide range of projects, including commercial offices, higher education facilities, hotels and residences, and cultural performance centers. His background in architecture gives him a unique understanding of how a space works and how an architect thinks, giving him the knowledge to better integrate lighting into a project. As a designer, he's motivated by taking elements that do not seem to work and finding an ideal solution for creating an entirely new product. So I will hand it over to you guys.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. You guys see? There we go. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Happy you joined us this afternoon or early evening. I'm Colleen Peach, and I have my coworker Eric here. And when we were thinking about this, maybe just a quick intro, and then we'll get into the our presentation here. Luma is part of PAE. We are their lighting design group. PAE is an engineering firm that has been originally based in Portland for 50 plus years or so. So they're pretty well ingrained in the Portland community and has since grown into Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. Luma is a group of about 15 to 18 lighting designers. PAE is about 360. We're an MVP engineering firm with a focus on sustainability. We do have a regenerative group that does a lot of energy modeling and sustainability work. And Eric, did you want to say anything before we get jumping in?
Yeah. Just one of the things that's really impressive to me when I started at PAE, we call it the bottom line, which is people, planet, profit. Every goal that every action that we take within the firm is supposed to be considered within those three options and in that order. So people, planet, and profit. And so that's how we really try to approach everything. And we have this opportunity to take a space in Portland and create a living building. And it was derived from those three things. So it's all about the people and the planet. And the profit maybe is another story. We won't get into that. But so yeah, Colleen, I'll turn it back to you.
Sure. So we're going to present our office here in Portland. So 10 plus years ago, maybe it started with the office in Portland, which is our largest office, roughly about 200 people or so. Their lease was coming up on their office space, and the leadership decided to, well, maybe we're in the market to build our own building, work with a developer. So they looked at various sites throughout the city, and they found a parking lot, an empty parking lot. And there's always been a big commitment to sustainability within the firm, really starting with Paul Schwer, who was our president for about 20 years. He recently transferred the reins over to the next CEO, but really sustainability has been at the core of PAE and Luma for many, many years. So they kind of really wanted to push the boundaries, and they wanted to do a living building here in the city. We're located in the historic district of Portland. We'll kind of talk about how that affected the design. And I should mention, I'm sure people are familiar with living building. PAE kind of wants to not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. So this building was just recently certified just this year for living building, and certification is based on true metrics. So it takes a couple years for that data to come in, more than just documenting the design, which is also part of it, but then really proving that it is a regenerative building. So we'll get into it. And I should mention the living building is first and foremost about advocacy, a philosophy, and then finally certification. So the certification is a little bit the third on the list of items. So really this is about advocating, and we'll talk about the various things that it goes after. So we're definitely talking about lighting, but there's some other really amazing things too to discuss. And if there are any questions, please let us know. We're happy to put you in touch with any of the engineers. We worked on this project with ZGF as the design architect, but then all of our MVP was done in-house, and energy modeling and so forth. So we do have a lot of rich data. And one other thing, just as a preface, Eric and I joined in February of this year. So I was not part of the design and construction process on the project. Our Portland team was, and some of those individuals are no longer here. So we really wanted to present this, and this was a presentation that was done at like ILD and so forth. So if you have seen it, my apologies. It might be a little bit repetitive, but we just want to make sure that we're clear on the design. And if there are any questions, we're more than happy to dig further into it. And actually, it's been a really great way for us this project was completed in 2021. We got the certification here this year. But this brings us to the question, where does Luma go from here? We have this great experience and information, but now, you know, what's sort of the next test. So these are the items that we're going to talk about in respects to this building, and we'll dive into it. So I'm just going to, the learning objectives, we'll talk about the Living Building Challenge and what that is in regards to lighting and lighting control. Our challenges with working with the Red List free lighting products. The building is a mass timber or cross-laminated timber construction, which is obviously sustainable in itself. We'll kind of talk about how we negotiated that, and Eric has some great insight on that. And then understanding the luminaire lighting control systems. So the Living Building Challenge is really the metaphor of a flower, trying to integrate your design into the beauty of a flower, which you know, sounds very appealing, but it's broken into 7 categories, or petals as they refer to them, which is place, water, energy, health and happiness, materials, equity, and beauty. And the ones that are highlighted here are the ones that lighting affects. Just touching base on the energy, we need it to be, I think it's 20% better than the baseline in embodied carbon. So that was what we were designing to. And the building really is supposed to be a standalone regenerative building where really you're not using any resources or taking from the grid. This is what it looks like. This is the final design. Like I mentioned, it's in the historic district of Portland. And with that came some restrictions. So we did have to go with a brick design for the facade. We couldn't have any sort of awnings or overhangs, so that did kind of limit us when we were thinking about daylighting. Same thing with, we have an array of PV on the roof, but we'll have a slide, we'll talk more about that, but we couldn't have anything overhanging. And Eric, feel free to jump in.
You're doing great, Colleen.
Okay. This is what the building looks like at dusk. It's 5 stories. I'm actually sitting in the building right now, just FYI. I am usually in Los Angeles. That's where I'm based. And we just started Illuma in LA, so that is what my main focus is right now. But I'm lucky enough to be up here for some training, and had a tour just yesterday. So we got to really talk a lot about this project and really understand, you know, the real beauty and amazing thing that they accomplished. So it's 5 stories. It's really built for 500-year life, which to me, you don't really hear too often people talking that way. This is the first developer-driven project. So we also wanted to show that it's possible to do it in an urban area with a developer that oftentimes is more bottom line focused. It's CLT and glulam, concrete construction, and so forth. I'll just highlight 2 because I thought we'll talk about lighting, but the water system is pretty incredible. So we have some photos of the interior, which we'll walk you through, but the 71,000 gallon cistern sits in the basement of this building. And luckily, Portland does get quite a bit of rain. So we collect that, and we're using that for our toilets. And also we're able to create potable water. And I'll highlight some other things that it's used, but basically we're not taking any water from the city system, and there's a whole, and they really like to show it off and display it within the building. We're basically manufacturing our own water, and what goes into that is not just pulling water from rain, but we have to clean it. So there's a whole system that does that, and we do have to have the health department check it on a pretty frequent basis. So I will kind of also say the maintenance of this building is pretty involved. So this
it's hard to talk about this building without talking about all the other systems.
Yeah,
we're here to talk about lighting, but without the other systems, the story is not as compelling.
Yeah, that's the nature of the holistic design, right?
Yes, yeah, that's what it's really all about. So this just shows an image. This was originally what the site looked like, just a surface parking lot. Like we mentioned, it was designed by ZGF. was the architect in charge. And this is where the design started from, this idea of natural proportion. So there's little hints of this throughout the building. That's how it was just proportionately, and various things that I'm like, oh, as I've walked through, for instance, just the sequencing of some of the dividers and so forth comes through. So it's, this image that you see in nature, whether it be like a snail or the flower or the Fibonacci sequence. This just quickly shows what the levels look like. It's pretty basic, the floor plans. There's a core where elevators and stairs are, then it's pretty much open office. PAE and Luma have floors 3 through 5, and then floor 2 is for, we have a tenant, and the first floor is for retail, which we are still working on getting tenants. And it opened in, the construction was completed in 2021. So kind of right in the midst of the pandemic, which we'll also kind of discuss. Just a photo of the systems, high level. The image down on the bottom right are the composting. So interesting, and this is hopefully no one is eating, but all the waste that's collected from toilets and so forth are collected, and it's put into these machines, and it's separated, and it goes through a process. We do create our own compost, and we're now working with a fertilizing company that is taking that product and then turning it into fertilizer and selling it. So we now have one thing that if you do come for a tour, I'm sure you'll probably see that if you want, you can buy fertilizer that is produced by the building. So, and there has been definitely some, lessons learned when you have composting, like on the first level of your building. there's fly catchers now. I mean, there's been some things that have come up that were not really necessarily understood at the beginning, at the outset. Did you want to talk about this one, Eric?
Yeah. So knowing that this would be a CLT structure, there's a lot of complications with doing that type of construction. For all of the benefits that come out of it, it means that you have to rethink all the ways that we might traditionally install lighting or other building systems. It's a lot like working on a concrete building, if any of you have ever done that, where you really have to plan out everything much more in advance than you might otherwise in any other type of typical construction. So we really wanted to focus on how could we not have any clutter on the ceiling. I'm sure we've all heard that from many of our clients on various projects, but that was also important to us because it's our building, and we wanted to really find how to do that, as well as have that as the experience that our employees have when they go to work each day. So one of the ways that we really focused on that is, and we'll get more into this, there's another slide that comes up that we'll talk more through this, but we really wanted to find a module or a rhythm to where we could put lights and other building systems. And this little yellow notch rectangle that you see up there really became where all of that would happen. And we'll talk more through that in a minute. There's another section that goes through that. But that was the real core of this. And I just found this out. Colleen doesn't even know this. The lights that we actually ended up using were a custom made light where we had to design the flange to incorporate with the panel that covered this module. So we'll get more into that in a second.
Okay, great. I'm gonna move on.
Yeah, can you go on?
Sure. So just quick, this is what the interior looks like. This is our third floor. So like I mentioned, the second floor is a tenant. So third floor is our main reception area. And on the left there, you see this is a painting by a local artist. And each floor has a different theme. So this is the coastal theme. Fourth floor is forest, which has a green. color tone, and then finally we have alpine, which is blue on the 5th floor. In terms of the light fixtures, you can kind of see what Eric was talking about, where that surface mount cylinder is. We've got these panels that are notched out of um, the CLT. And here's another image for our open office. And what you'll notice too is that we have windows flanking all the facades. We did daylight studies, and we do have that data in another slide, so you can see that. But our goal was really to bring in as much daylight as possible and minimize the amount of electrical light that's needed, because we did see that the electrical load from lighting can be quite a bit. And then there are OC sensors connected in each fixture. And it is,
And
yeah.
I just wanted to say, I had just spoken with somebody else in the building right before we started meeting. They told me that the floor that they're on, no one has the lights on at all.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the, it's really designed that way to give the users that experience, to have that level of control over the building. And also because knowing that most of us are working on computers, we don't need paper as much. So we didn't really need those higher light levels that we may have needed 10 or 15 or 20 years ago.
Yeah, and one thing you'll notice too is that they pointed this out a couple times, is you'll notice we have the large CLT beam running down. This view is the same view daytime versus dusk, and they purposely did not have. You'll see those exterior columns. You'll notice that there's not a beam running there, so that was done on purpose. So we wouldn't be blocked. Certain windows would not be blocked with that. So they actually put it, that's why there's this called a pony wall, and that's where the structure is. So that was done on purpose to allow maximum windows. And also just to note, because the mechanical engineers are very proud of this radiant floor. So there's water being pumped through it to be able to heat the building. And just more images of what we do have exposed ductwork there. So you can see what's going on in the ceiling. And I think, Eric, this is what you were referring to.
So here, this is the module that we really developed, where the light you can see is in the middle. All of the other systems are incorporated into this notch, and then the acoustic panel covers that. So it's a very holistic solution that allows the ceiling to be as clean as possible. It's not just linear lights. Also, if there's a pendant, the J box will be housed in that location as well. So, and then this doesn't show it, but I believe that all of the wiring comes from above and goes down through the concrete topping slab down into the electrical devices and the other building systems. And then that module was developed so that they could have a consistent spread of light, as well as the other surfaces like the sprinklers and things like that. So that's why they all are running in that same channel in the ceiling.
And then this is just some diagrams showing work that was done on the daylighting model. You can see we've got the baseline, and what you're looking at, that bottom row is a plan showing the orange being how much daylight is coming through through the windows, the light shelf versus, and then finally the daylight redirecting film. And we've kind of been mulling this over and really trying to kind of get all of our ducks in a row on this. And obviously, like I mentioned, we could not have any sort of awning on the outside. So we just felt like the light shelf they just really wanted to provide as much light as possible. And then it also came down to cost. There was talk of having like automatic shades. And what ultimately happened, as you can see in that image on the left, is they're just manual crank metal shades or blinds, which I think most people in the office really kind of like, that they can, if you're getting too much, if the sun's just coming in at the right place and putting glare on your computer screen, they have the controllability to do what they want with it. So I think that that's actually kind of worked out for the best. One thing too, this is not really lighting related, but with a mechanical system, the windows automatically open based on the temperature on the exterior and interior. So one of the things that most people have complained about is that these are kind of noisy and they take a while to open. So there's just some things that, now that people have been living in this building, and for the most part, we're in a hybrid work situation, but the building is occupied most days. So now we're really kind of, I think, actually getting into the real meat of it, where we're understanding how it really works in an office environment, and how, this building's really going to survive for 500 years as this living thing.
That's really cool to see that the redirecting film like was more effective than the light shelf. I find that really interesting. Do you know, just out of curiosity, like the lifespan of the film? Like, is that something that needs to be
That's
replaced?
a really good question. We ended up not using the redirecting film, and I think it was due to cost.
Oh, okay.
And also just it might have been a little bit too much light, but that's a really good question. I would be kind of curious, because I don't have the experience in knowing like the life cycle of the redirecting film.
Gotcha.
We will definitely write that down and see. There's all these questions Eric and I keep are like, well, we need to understand why certain decisions are made, or how are things currently going on some of the decisions that were made. Just some more photos showing meeting spaces, and what you're seeing there in that large photo, those are acoustical baffles. Again, just more images. This is what we call, this is on our 5th floor. This is our Decatini, and just kind of some interesting aspects. We've got, again, it's not lighting, but doing, just touching on the water system. So you can see those plants there. We do have called an urban garden. So those are vegetable plants. I think there's tomatoes and peppers and so forth. They are being irrigated through recycled water. So just sort of a nice, another thing that we're doing in terms of really kind of, I'll call it urban farming. And bringing people together. And also we work with, I think there's a local farming group that helps with taking care of this. So also working with the local community. And same thing with the fertilizing company.
That's really cool.
Just another view of our, what we call the Decatini. I don't know who coined that term, but that's what it's known as. At night, this is what it looks like. And again, this is an image of those, the toilets. So there's literally one of these blue items, or kind of like larger tanks for each toilet. So the toilet is, and I won't belabor this, but it is kind of interesting. It is a vacuum system. So think of it kind of like the toilets that are in airport or in airplanes. That's what a composting toilet modern version kind of looks like. So talking about material sourcing, which was also really critical when it came to the sourcing of all the interior materials and the lighting. This just gives a breakdown of the percentage. So I think we're somewhat lucky being on the West Coast. There are some good lighting manufacturers locally here where we're able to get quality products. Looking at the fixture schedule, most of the fixtures come from fairly well-known manufacturers. And here's just the red list of what, and this might now be updated with even more list of materials, but when we were designing, this is what we were designing to. This is just a breakdown of quite a bit of research. This was being designed. Oh, are you guys, sorry, I think my screen just went.
We're
No,
still
we can
here.
still
Oh,
see.
we can see it.
Oh, sorry, let me just get back to. Sorry, my
No worries.
screen just kind of went weird.
You're probably thinking like, what do they see? No, we're seeing that just a regular, like a good screen. So good.
Are you seeing the regular screen?
Yeah, like the first page.
Yeah, we're seeing your PowerPoint on the.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know what it, let me get my computer. You still there?
It's
It's
loading.
loading up.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, maybe there was like a surge or something, or internet break. That's very strange. Okay, there's my mouse. Okay, I'm back at the right screen. I apologize, I don't know what that was. Yeah, so just showing all the products that were vetted. This was done in 2017, 2018 timeframes. So now fast forward 6 years later, I'm sure that from what you guys were discussing earlier too, that the declaration and this information is just a lot more accessible than it was even just 5, 6 years ago. So it's great. I think as we keep pushing manufacturers to have this information, just the better for the industry. And then we're just going to touch on lighting controls. This could probably be a whole other presentation. This is what the lobby looks like. On the very first floor, which I mentioned also has the systems displayed. So that's really kind of what it is. And the right, that art piece, we are on land that we acknowledge is tribal land originally. So that's done by a local artist, and that it is going back and acknowledging their culture. And then the large kind of piece of metal that you see on the floor, that is actually the access panel down to the cistern. So as you're sort of walking into the building, there are these things that kind of remind you that, hey, this is a living building, and it's just very much integrated into the design. We're quite proud of the stairwell. We really encourage people to use the stairs versus the elevator. And a lighting design aspect that we did is as more people use the stairs, the lighting changes. It's on a DMX system, it's an RGBW. So there are sensors in the stairs. And so to promote people doing more walking, that is the intention of the design.
That's really fun.
We should say that it doesn't work quite as well as it was
one of the
supposed
lessons
to.
learned.
But it's a really great design concept, and I think it's with some tweaking we can probably get it to be where it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what's the intended change was from what to what?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. We'll have to find out, Eric, if there was.
Yeah.
Color?
Yeah,
Or
I mean it.
I think that I don't know the exact parameters that they were designing to, but the intent was if it starts to change color, that means more people are using the stairs.
Mhm.
So I don't know if there's any meaning behind the color necessarily, but I think just if it's not a static white, that means more people would be using the stairs.
very
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah, we'll find that out if there was like it. And I've used the stairs quite a bit in the last day or so, and it does change color, but yeah, it's not quite as noticeable as I think we would like. So there's some tweaks that need to happen. And this is just a breakdown of the code, lighting power density. That's what we were needing to design to when we designed it to 0.31. So which really is just using efficient lights and then also fewer lights, and really depending much more on the daylighting. Just a quick diagram. We do have, like I mentioned, a PV array on top. So we're not pulling from the grid. We're really completely, basically, if the power went out, this building could be really running on its own, water included, for at least a couple days, just completely as normal. And because we were limited on the square footage of our roof, I think they were kind of thinking like, oh, what are we going to do? You know, we really can't do an overhang like I mentioned. So luckily, working with the developer, there was an affordable housing project going up not too far away. And just as also adding to the equity aspect to this project is we were able to, I guess I'll classify it as donate PV to their project, so then they could have a lower electrical bill. And we, were able to also get where we needed to be for the amount of PV that we needed. And just an interesting note too, so we do have batteries in our central system area on the first floor. And that was another lesson learned, is that with this type of building and the batteries that are needed for this microgrid, is that you do have to be very careful, because they look like car batteries. And there's quite a bit of, like fire protection that's needed for those, which I think they knew, but it's quite intense. It's not really the normal thing that you have in buildings. Just showing how that all works. Just a diagram showing where we do have, we maybe mentioned it, but it is a dolly lighting control system. So all the lights are individually addressable. We have a DMX system in the stairs. It was a customized system, so one of our employees really worked on that, and that's another thing that we want to get a little bit deeper into. I would say one of the lessons learned is, with it being so customized, was it necessary? I think that's maybe a key question. And also, when something goes wrong, as we're a couple of years in, drivers and so forth, it's not the easiest thing to replace, sort of. So that's one thing that as owners of this building too, we're noticing. And this just gives a look of what that looked like.
So I just want to say that the person who worked on the control system actually built these devices to control what was happening. So that's a pretty phenomenal skill set to have, but also makes, as Colleen was mentioning, it's complicated because he doesn't work for us anymore. So if something goes wrong, what do we do? So
yeah. Do you guys know anything about how you ended up going with Dolly?
That's a good question. I mean, I do think there is the power of being able to really address every fixture, but that's a really good question. I think we'd also like to, understand moving forward. Just as a note too, PAE has done 6 living buildings that have been certified, and I think there's about 13 or so in the process. So I think that's something, Eric, we should kind of talk more about when it comes to lighting controls. Do you have to have that level of controllability?
Yeah. Again, we don't know the answer, but my guess is that Dolly would allow us to have more data to access, and just like this chart we'll talk about in a second, but I think that's why it was chosen.
Like for the smart building aspect, sort of.
Yeah, and allowing us to have even more individualized control over individual fixtures.
So this just is a breakdown, and this is from 2022, or a little over a year, starting in 2022, just showing one really nice thing amongst all the systems, which have to work together. We're able to get real data, which was required for the certification, but also just for our education to understand, how much power is lighting using, and how does that maybe change throughout the year based on, how much natural daylight we're getting. Or we were seeing, we'll show you on the next slide here, how much the total lighting, and we were kind of wondering, like, so the yellow is the actual use, that sort of light blue green is the modeled light. So as you see, 2022, pretty low amount of light, and we're like, wow, it really spikes up in 2023, May through July. We're like, oh, well, that's probably when people were coming back into the office after COVID. So and this is one thing that I think we'd like to just keep getting that data, which is pretty easy for us. Our senior principal here, Mark Bruni, is really kind of a key person in having access to this and really being able to pull out so much really incredible data to understand, when we design this, how are we doing, and having it be really kind of a living experiment, I guess I'll call it. And then just some cost considerations. We were working with a developer. The company did also, the senior principals did put in their own money too, so they own part of this building. The original budget was about $600K. So, $23 a square foot seems about right. We were actually able to bring it in lower than that. In the process of cost collaboration, again, just a comparison of the original budget and then working together to help bring that down, which I'm sure part of that was also really looking closely at the energy model to eliminate some fixtures as well. And then, this was built during the midst of when the pandemic hit in 2020 in Portland here. There's been some natural disasters too, like an ice storm, wildfire issues, which affected supply chain, workflow changes. I'm sure there was probably some things as the pandemic and everything sort of affected everyone that went on. So where does this take us? I think we'll sort of land on that. And then we also have a QR code. If people are interested, you can also go to the website and take an actual tour if you want to really kind of see more of it, like you're walking through the building. It is a really beautiful building to work in, and just feels very comfortable with all these natural materials. And it just sort of feels, it does feel a little bit different than a normal building in a very good way. So yeah, with that, I guess if there's any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a really beautiful, beautiful space. I can see how you guys have a lot of, pride in calling that your home.
Can I ask a quick question about about the building functions? Since the building is so self-sustainable or like standalone, not depending on the utility coming from like either the grid or the main.
Mhm.
Does this building also serves any functions of like emergency rescue or the places of
Yeah, I believe it is designed to that.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it would be like if services would come in and use the building. I can follow up and find out if there are like official, but yes, I do
I
know
think
that
it's
they did
such
mention.
a
Mhm.
like a public asset to have the
Yeah.
building.
Yes. That's actually a really good question. I'll see if there is an official agreement with like the local jurisdiction about if there were, um, you know, and it's interesting too. There's I learned too on the exterior with um, the brick facade, they put in, I mean, there's just a lot of meaning in it too. There's a row, it's probably about 3 feet or so up from the ground that indicates the flood line. And then basically about 12 feet above give or take, is another line which indicates if climate change continues, this is where the flood line is going, which is really kind of scary. So there are kind of some, you know, some interesting things on that. But yeah, that's a great question.
I think that wraps things up for us. If anybody remaining, if you guys want to turn on your cameras, I'd welcome you to do that. If anybody has any wrap up comments that they want to share, or any other questions outstanding.
I do want to emphasize both presentation was very inspiring and comes down to like why we want to do this, like really inspiring to the like the core of the heart, that like why we have to do this. It's very different two presentations, but like both of them have like it touches to the like heart so much. So thank you so much for sharing that story.
Sure.
Anyone else?
I just want to say thanks to Chad. I really felt inspired hearing your story and your journey as well. That was very motivating. So thank you.
Yeah, it was really great. Thank you.
I just want to say too that, you know, references like the AZ lighting, I think, Reiko, you were referencing that in the last email between our team, and also Building Ease. That's a new database too that has some sustainable lighting products listed in there, and you can filter it for third-party certifications and HPDs, EPDs, and things like that, because I think people don't know where to go to find the lighting products, and affordability too. That's a key question in all of this. Excellent presentations. Thank you.
Can I mention one more item? From Chad's presentation, we had the beautiful comparison of what is the desk running from the narrow windows, comparing from the more simple state to the like state of art Yale classroom. And then in Colleen and Eric, your presentation, you guys had the desk just very same layout.
I noticed
That
that
was
too,
already been
Rico.
mentioned from Chad's presentation. I thought it was such a good, you know, like we do the right thing and we continue, and those are the best things to learn it from.
Yeah, it was a nice tie together. Well,
Yeah,
thank you.
thanks everybody for your input, and it was good. It was very educational and informative, and it's good to see that everybody's trying to move the industry in a little bit better direction. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, thanks, Gregory. I want to remind everyone too, we have our next one on April 14th, so you can hold that date in your calendar. It'll be 5 o'clock again, and hope to see you guys there. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.